Today I'm going to do a couple of really quick sort of top tips for success when stenciling. Now, today I'm working with a wood round that I have painted out white, and I'm just going to quickly use black paint and show you a few tips. I've loaded my paint onto a styrofoam plate. I'm using a domed stencil brush, and what that means is it's not perfectly flat. There's a little bit of a round edge, tends to soften the paint when you're painting, if that makes sense. Anyways, I'm gonna load paint onto my brush, and then I'm gonna work over here to offload it. I want my brush to be really dry. You can always come back and add more paint, but taking it away is harder. So I can use a paper towel over here and just offload onto this paper towel so that my brush is really nice and dry. Also, I've used a hinge to apply my stencil to the board. And the reason I do this is if I ever want to check my paint application, I can lift the stencil still, but it's still good and sturdy. So, a couple of different ways. I tend to, on wood, I like to swirl my paint on. And what that means is when I'm applying my paint, I just swirl the brush around and I get what I feel is like a really light airbrush type effect. I don't want a solid black paint here. I want it to look very natural. So if you see that there, I think these marks were on the board before. Anyway, I've just done a really nice light airbrush type effect. Now, another way, and I tend to use this next method if I were working on something I wanted to look like a chalkboard on wood, and that is tapping. And like I say, if I was working on a project, let's say I had painted my board out black first and I was doing white paint, I would want it to look like chalk, and I would go heavier than what, I don't know if that's visible or not, but I would go heavier than that. Anyway, the main thing is really have very little paint on your brush. You can see how far this is going. And I took a ton of paint off of this brush. And you can see here how light that paint is. So that's our number one stencil tip for today. I will be back with more tips on fabric and doormats. They seem to be the top questions I get. First, this one, number one, how do I apply paint without the paint going underneath the stencil or bleeding? 2, how do I paint fabric? And 3, how do you apply paint on the core doormats? So, I hope that helps.